먹어도 먹어도 끝이 없는 나라. 감당할 수 있겠니?
Coming up on Arirang News, President Yoon and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman have taken bilateral cooperation to a new level with major deals signed in key sectors, from Saudi Arabia's Neom City project to tourism. They also jointly oppose the attacking of civilians in the Israel-Hamas conflict. Hamas says more than 140 people lost their lives in fresh Israeli air attacks overnight in Gaza. But the Israeli military says dozens of Hamas gunmen and commanders have been killed. This while the U.S. issues a warning to Iran to prevent the war from expanding. 4 North Koreans who are believed to have tried to defect on a small wooden boat have been detained after crossing the de facto sea border between the two Koreas this morning. Investigations are ongoing as to whether their intention to defect is genuine. Good evening. It's 9 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. We begin with President Yoon wrapping up his state visit to Saudi Arabia. During a speech at the Future Investment Initiative, often dubbed the Davos in the desert, President Yoon talked up South Korea as a reliable country to invest in. After making his opening remarks, the president then sat down for an interview with Scott Snyder, a director for the program on U.S.-Korea policy at the Council on Foreign Relations think tank. Yoon mentioned the successful track record of South Korean firms when it comes to infrastructure projects in the Middle East. In attendance were prominent business and finance leaders from across the world, as well as Saudi government officials. Also, according to the presidential office, Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman made a surprise visit to President Yoon at the palace's guest house just prior to the event, and the two had a candid conversation for around 15 minutes. In fact, the Saudi Crown Prince invited President Yoon to his convoy to FII, and the two walked into the event together. Bilateral cooperation between South Korea and Saudi Arabia has been taken to a new level, with major deals signed in key sectors, from Saudi's Neom City project to tourism. Woo Soo-young reports from Riyadh as she travels with the president.
President Yoon mapped out the future of South Korea and Saudi Arabia's cooperation in the digital post-oil era, as construction and IT giants from each side penned major deals to build smart cities and infrastructure. This came as Yoon on Monday marked the 50th anniversary of South Korea's first entry into the Saudi construction sector at a multimedia exhibit in Riyadh showcasing the country's Neom line, a linear car-free sustainable city projected to open in 2039.
처음에 2천만 불에서 시작한 양국의 건설 협력 규모는 반세기 만에 1,600억 불로 확대됐습니다.
Reflecting on the decades of Korean firms and workers involved in over 1,900 projects across Saudi Arabia, Yoon called for the two countries to now build on their solid foundation of cooperation to meet the evolving demands of the times.
사우디는 새로운 국가 비전의 일환으로 네옴시티와 같은 메가 프로젝트를 추진하고 있습니다. 여기에 한국이 보유하고 있는 첨단 도시 건설 역량을 결합한다면 양국이 함께 미래 도시의 새로운 모델을 전 세계에 보여줄 수 있습니다.
South Korea's Hamon Corporation first won a $24 million contract to build a 164-kilometer-long expressway in Saudi Arabia in 1973, which opened the door to more construction projects in the Middle East. This in turn became a stepping stone for South Korean firms to make a leap into the global market and play a major role in modernizing the country's economy. As he called for a new era of infrastructural cooperation, the president oversaw the signing of 4 major deals for Korean firms in Saudi, a $2.4 billion contract to work on the Jafurah gas plant facility, a contract to build a digital twin platform, a virtual geospatial model of the real world for urban planning and management in 5 Saudi cities, along with an MOU on modular construction and an agreement to roll out digital infrastructure. Also on Monday, Yoon attended the Korea-Saudi Future Technologies Partnership Forum, where he discussed ways to strengthen collaboration on science and technology, focusing on 4 major fields including digital, clean energy, biohealth and space. Yoon's office says as both countries seek cutting-edge innovation and sustainability going forward, South Korea aims to increase joint research projects and people-to-people exchanges with Saudi Arabia, fostering a future-oriented partnership based on science and technology. 오수영, Arirang News, Riyadh.
For the first time in more than 40 years, Seoul and Riyadh have issued a joint statement agreeing to expand cooperation between the two. In the statement, they also say they oppose the attacks on civilians in the Israel-Hamas conflict. Kim Do-yeon has the details.
South Korea and Saudi Arabia jointly rejected actions targeting civilians in the escalating situation between Israel and Palestine, while agreeing to work with the international community for swift humanitarian assistance to suffering civilians. The statement also said the two sides stressed the importance of intensifying efforts to prevent the conflict from spreading and the need for political solution and durable peace based on the two-state solution. This as Seoul and Riyadh came up with a joint statement on Tuesday, their first in 43 years, in light of President Yoon Suk-yeol's state visit to Saudi Arabia hosted by Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The statement, comprised of 44 specific items of cooperation between Seoul and Riyadh, covered all areas from economic cooperation and cultural exchanges to regional security in the Middle East and East Asia. The two also agreed to actively explore the expansion of mutual investments in areas including the hydrogen economy, smart cities, future mobility means, and startups. As the two countries celebrate 50 years since South Korea's first construction project in Saudi Arabia, they agreed to continue building on this exchange with Saudi's ambitious Vision 2030 and NEOM project and other giga projects such as the Red Sea project. The statement also showed motivations for the two to enhance cooperation in defense and defense industry. In fact, on Monday, President Yoon also met with Khalid bin Salman Al Saud, Saudi defense minister, and other military officials, where they showed interest in jointly working with South Korea's arms production. The top office says this has paved the way for even more export deals for South Korean arms companies. Energy cooperation, conventional and new, was also mentioned in the statement. Saudi Arabia pledged to be the most reliable partner for crude oil, while South Korea is set to work with Riyadh for clean hydrogen and peaceful use of nuclear energy. Both sides also welcomed the growing popularity of Korean culture in Saudi Arabia and agreed expanding opportunities for civilian exchanges between the two countries. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
President Yoon Suk-yeol says South Korea and Qatar should go beyond cooperation in energy and construction to new emerging industries as they look to elevate their collaboration upon 50 years of bilateral ties next year. Ahead of an official state visit to Doha on Tuesday, President Yoon told a local media outlet that over the past half-century, the two nations have worked and prospered together, especially in the energy and construction sectors. As he aims to gain a deeper understanding of the country's development efforts under its National Vision 2030, Yoon noted that he'll seek to expand bilateral cooperation in the areas of energy, infrastructure, and trade, among others. He also spotlighted the growing cultural interactions and people-to-people exchanges. The South Korean leader will hold a bilateral summit with his Qatari counterpart on Wednesday. Turning now to the latest in Gaza. Over 100 Palestinians have lost their lives in a series of Israeli air attacks overnight. With the conflict escalating, the U.S. has deployed military advisors to Israel as it prepares for a ground offensive. The U.S. has also issued a warning to Iran against the expansion of the war. 송유진 reports.
More than 100 Palestinians were killed during Israeli air attacks in Gaza overnight on Monday and into Tuesday morning. Citing Gaza's Hamas-run government media office, Al Jazeera reports that more than 140 people lost their lives and hundreds more are wounded. The airstrikes hit a refugee camp in northern Gaza as well as the southern cities of Rafah and Khan Yunis. The Israel Defense Forces released surveillance footage on Tuesday of what is said were airstrikes in Gaza. The military added it struck dozens of Hamas gunmen and buildings and that several Hamas commanders had been killed. The latest figures from the Israeli and Palestinian health ministries show that more than 6,400 people have died since the start of the flare-up on October 7th. This comes as Israel prepares for its ground operation in Gaza. The U.S. on Monday sent its military advisors to Israel.
What I can tell you is that that there are a few relevant military officers with experience, the kinds of experience that we believe is appropriate to the sorts of operations that Israel is conducting and may conduct in the future.
An unidentified U.S. official told AP News that among them is Marine Corps Lieutenant General James Glynn, who previously helped lead Special Operations Forces against the Islamic State. The official added that Glynn will be advising on how to mitigate civilian casualties in urban warfare. At the same briefing, Kirby also delivered Washington's warning to Iran.
We know they've supported Hamas and Hezbollah. We know they're monitoring these events very, very closely, and in some cases urging on some of these groups. And that's why I made it clear the president does not want to see this conflict widen. We have added additional military capability into the region to deter any such action, and we will act appropriately to protect and defend our national security interests in the region.
There's been an increase in attacks on U.S. military bases in Iraq and Syria recently, which the U.S. believes were supported by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard and the Iranian government. 송유진, Arirang News.
In other news, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi is reportedly scheduled to visit the U.S. later this week, ahead of a possible summit between the two countries on the margins of the APEC meeting in November in San Francisco. Yoon has details.
According to senior officials in Washington, Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi is set to visit the U.S. Capitol from October 26th to 28th, where he'll meet with Secretary of State Antony Blinken and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. The diplomatic meeting comes as the war in Ukraine continues and the U.S. looks to prevent the Israel-Hamas war from escalating into a wider conflict in the Middle East. China's close relations with Tehran prompted Blinken to speak with Wang earlier this month to urge Beijing to use its relationships with the countries in the Middle East to prevent the conflict from spreading. Other topics expected to be discussed include the South and East China Seas, cross-strait issues, and North Korea's provocations. But Wang's visit is expected to focus largely on discussing a possible meeting between the presidents of the two countries, potentially during the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit set to be held in San Francisco next month. Biden and Xi last met on the sidelines of the G20 in Bali in November of last year and have not spoken since. Relations between the two countries have deteriorated over a variety of issues, including trade, technology, human rights, the status of Taiwan, and China's stance on the war in Ukraine. They were further thrown into crisis when a Chinese spy balloon was shot down over U.S. territory earlier this year. Whether or not Wang will meet with President Biden during his current visit is yet to be seen, with the trip described as reciprocal to Blinken's visit to Beijing in June when he met with Chinese President Xi. While China has expressed interest in a Biden-Xi meeting, it has also pressed for concessions, such as the easing of U.S. export controls on advanced semiconductors and other strategically important technologies. As stated by State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller, there is no substitute for one-on-one conversations at the leader level, which remains hopeful for next month. 이은진, Arirang News.
4 North Koreans who are believed to have tried to defect on a small wooden boat have been detained after crossing the de facto sea border between the two Koreas this morning. Investigations are underway as to whether their intention to defect is genuine. In the meantime, the military is facing surveillance criticism. Our defense correspondent Choi Min-jung reports.
4 suspected North Korean defectors have reportedly been found in a small wooden boat in waters east of Sokcho, Gangwon-do province. According to a government official on Tuesday, they had expressed their intentions to defect. South Korean military authorities have confirmed that the suspected defectors have been detained after the movements were tracked.
A small wooden boat, believed to have come from North Korea, was spotted and tracked using coastal surveillance equipment.
A JCS official said at around 4 a.m., the military dispatched ships and maritime patrol aircraft near the northern limit line after spotting unusual movement from the north. At around 5:30 a.m., an army radar detected an object moving toward the south steadily at a very low speed. An hour later, the military used a thermal observation device to track the boat, which was moving diagonally towards Sokcho. A fishing boat from South Korea had also spotted the boat in waters around 11 kilometers east of Sokcho and reported it to the Coast Guard. Questions are being raised as to why the military could not spot the crossing of the NLL. A JCS official explained that detecting such crossovers is difficult as the NLL in the EC is over 400 kilometers long. The official also reassured that the military has been monitoring the boat closely after being detected on its surveillance equipment, and added that they have been cooperating closely with the Coast Guard and the Navy. A similar event happened 4 years ago when 4 North Korean fishermen defected to South Korea's Samcheok port in the EC and were forcibly repatriated to the north by the Moon administration. Last May, North Korean residents defected by crossing the NLL in the West Sea. The government is reportedly confirming whether the intentions of Tuesday's defectors are genuine. Defectors undergo an interrogation conducted by a joint investigation team consisting of the military, police, intelligence authorities, and the Unification Ministry. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
Since the country's first reports of lumpy skin disease, a viral infection affecting cattle, the confirmed number of cases has risen to 27 so far across the country. The nation's prime minister vows to prevent the spread in the early stages. Yoon has the latest.
The outbreak of the viral lumpy skin disease appears to be spreading, with the number of farms found to have confirmed cases increasing to 27 as of Tuesday evening. According to the Central Disaster Management Headquarters, 3 additional farms are also under investigation. The first case was confirmed in Chungcheongnam-do province on October the 20th, with more being confirmed in other regions, including Gyeonggi-do and Chungcheongnam-do provinces. In response, the Ministry of the Interior and Safety started joint inspections on Monday with the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs in 5 West Coast regions. However, concerns are growing as out of the 10 additional reported outbreaks on Tuesday, Gangwon-do province located on the East Coast had its first case confirmed. Prime Minister Han Duk-soo spoke about the spread of the disease during Tuesday's ministerial meeting, emphasizing the importance of taking action in the early stages and adding the government will give its full support to prevent additional outbreaks.
Considering the period required for antibody formation, the next 3 weeks are crucial. We understand that livestock farmers may face many challenges, but we kindly request your active cooperation with the government's disease prevention measures.
Lumpy skin disease is a viral infection in cattle that is transmitted by blood-feeding insects, but it is not transmissible to humans. The mortality rate is under 10%, while symptoms include blisters and lower milk production. So far, over 1,600 cattle have been culled. Meanwhile, the authorities are proceeding with vaccinations of over 50,000 cows as rapidly as possible. Earlier on Sunday, the Interior Ministry announced that special subsidies of over 10 billion Korean won, or almost $7.5 million, will be provided to help halt the spread of the disease. Subsidies will be allocated to support disease prevention activities by local governments, including the operation of disinfection facilities. Yoon, Arirang News.
South Korea's producer prices rose for the 3rd month in a row in September. Data from the Bank of Korea on Tuesday shows that the producer price index, an indicator of future inflation, rose 0.4% from the previous month. The rise was mostly attributed to the spike in international oil prices, which pushed up the prices of coal and oil products as well as chemical products. A central bank official said that it is unclear whether October's producer price index will also see an increase, as oil prices have been fluctuating after skyrocketing right after the start of the Israel-Hamas conflict. Later this week, the government is set to announce more details about its plan to increase the medical school enrollment quota that's been frozen at a little over 3,000 since 2006. This is part of a greater plan for structural reforms in medical infrastructure to ensure quality services in essential fields. Our Lee Si-ho reports.
The government recently revealed its medical infrastructure reform plan, which includes increases in medical school enrollment quotas. The ruling and opposition parties have also launched related task forces as the number of doctors falls short of the OECD average.
According to OECD statistics, for every 1,000 people in South Korea, there's just 2.6 practicing medical doctors. This is the second lowest figure in the OECD, which has an average of 3.7 doctors per 1,000 people.
The ruling People Power Party says that the ultimate goal isn't the quota increase, but building a system where more lives are saved.
The number of patients who have died despite being eligible for treatment is 38.6 per 100,000 people in Seoul, while 49.6 in Gangwon-do. There's such a severe medical imbalance between regions. We need to build a system that allows patients in a critical emergency to be treated in a timely manner.
The main opposition Democratic Party is pushing for the founding of public medical schools and fostering stronger medical education at existing public universities.
Unless public medical doctors are directly trained or regional doctor systems are introduced, it will be impossible to secure essential medical personnel. The DP's solution is not to simply increase the number, but to make sure that the government carefully controls the number and their deployment.
Meanwhile, the Korean Medical Association says that simply increasing the number will not solve the issue.
The collapse of essential medical care and regional gaps that Korean society is encountering is essentially due to the avoidance of certain departments, so we're doubtful that increasing the quantitative number will improve the avoidance problem.
The KMA will be meeting with the Health Ministry this Thursday to discuss the issue. Discussions are also expected to continue at the Parliament until the details are finalized by spring to be reflected in the 2025 university admissions. Lee Si-ho, Arirang News.
In other news, the Korea Tourism Organization has released the world's first ever promotional video created using artificial intelligence. It's been made in celebration of Visit Korea year 2023-2024 and is called What If Vincent van Gogh Visited Korea? It showcases famous tourist attractions in the country with the artistic styles of 11 renowned painters from around the world, including Van Gogh, Monet, and Klimt. The Korea Tourism Organization resolved copyright issues by selecting artists whose works have been in the public domain for over 70 years. The organization collected over 1,100 images of artworks from the painters, taking 6 months to create the video.
Mild autumn weather continues tomorrow. Overall conditions will be fairly moderate, along with big contrast in daily temperatures. Some regions, such as Jiangsu and Jeollabuk-do province, will see lows plunging to single figures, but highs will surpass the 20-degree mark. Some lingering showers are in store for parts of central regions. About 5 to 10 millimeters of rainfall will be coming and going for the remainder of the night. For the East Coast, conditions are a whole lot different with dry air. There is an elevated risk of wildfires, so please be extra careful. Morning temperatures in Seoul and Gwangju will be starting off at 12 degrees Celsius. Warm daytime conditions are expected nationwide. Highs in Seoul will get up to 22 degrees. Chuncheon 20, Daegu and Busan will be topping out at 23 degrees. Clear skies will make a return by this weekend, and for the remainder of the week, temperatures will hover around the seasonal average. It's all for now, and to the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that brings an end to tonight's newscast. Thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with the most up-to-date news. Good night.